Hi DF crew! Exclamation point. Based on how the B580 performs, how would a hypothetical B770 perform based on rumored specs, and what would it need to succeed? Yeah, that's an interesting point because, yeah, the concept of a 580 does suggest there will be a 770, just as there was with the first generation ARC. And I would suggest that you will be looking, based on projections from B580, that you're looking at a product that would vary between 4060 Ti to 4070 Ti performance, which is a wide band. But that is kind of slightly strange about B580, is that the performance you get out of it seems to vary quite dramatically. It's much more inconsistent versus AMD versus NVIDIA. And also, when you're looking at power consumption, I mean, the B580 is like 190 watt TDP. It doesn't ever seem to hit 190 watts based on the titles I did look at, and it can go like as low as 140 watts in Alan Wake 2. Kind of suggests that there's a utilization issue with the amount of silicon they've got. And so in terms of what a B770 is going to do, I'd expect it to be exactly like B580, but scaled up into the next GPU class. So you're going to be looking at a product that will have a wildly variable level of performance. And with that in mind, I strongly suspect that Intel will need to adopt the same strategy that they did with B580, which is to say, let's take a look at where our average performance lies and then try to outclass the competition with attractive price points, which I think is probably the best way forward. But it does seem to be the case that whether this underutilization issue is down to the drivers or whether it's just down to architecture, it just highlights to me that this is a long journey that Intel is on, and they need to kind of invest for the long term here. And I think they will. Obviously, some journalist was saying that we wouldn't even get a second generation ARC product. Well, here it is, and we did get it. And I suspect we'll get third and fourth as well, simply because if you look at the technology investments that Intel needs to make to seize market share from NVIDIA, not necessarily in the games market, but in the enterprise business, they've got to be doubling down on GPU, even if they're taking these big hits to the bottom line in the short term. Longer term, it's going to need to pay off. You're all in on AI, Oliver. That's surely the more overarching strategy here, right?
Yes, if they can foresee any path to start to claw into server market share, whether that's in 2 years, 5 years, 10 years, I think you got to invest all in on graphics. I mean, Intel's in kind of a dire state. I think that's like one potential lifeline out of this is to be there, and it matters for it matters for everything. It matters for every processor with an integrated GPU that you ship, that you have high quality graphics there. So I think it's a huge mistake, I think, for them to have canceled Larrabee and other similar projects. And you should have continued to develop GPUs back then. Maybe not Larrabee specifically, because Larrabee had some interesting architectural quirks, but certainly they should have continued a GPU project past like 2009 or whenever they canceled Larrabee. But yeah, on the B770 question, I do think one possible concern here is that if you scale up that chip, continue to scale it up, power consumption starts to matter a little bit more, I'd worry, and you're running into some efficiency questions, especially with players who might live in the EU, where electricity is quite a bit more expensive than it tends to be here in North America. So I'd worry about some of those questions, because I do think that starts to matter a little bit more when you start to push a little bit more on price and you're entering a more premium segment of the market. Yeah, but in general, it just should be a bigger B580, I'd imagine, in general.
Yeah, I guess my concern would be that the inconsistency in performance that we see with B580, if it's a scalability issue, then that inconsistency could actually be wider on a bigger chip with more Xe cores. I'm really going to be interested to see whether the B570, if and when it appears, how they choose to pitch it, and how they choose to price it. But John, I mean, this other part of the question that from Gorguts here, what would it need to succeed? Well, you're basically an NVIDIA guy in terms of graphics, right? There's nothing with ARC that's going to make you change your mind, really, a bigger ARC.
Absolutely not. And it's just down to the type of product that I would want isn't the type of product that they should probably make, which is
Yes.
the Halo high-end product.
Yeah.
Like we're in a different category though, right? Like we
Yeah.
are these kind of tech nerds that are striving for the best, and NVIDIA can deliver that, and they're the only ones that can do it right now, it seems.
Well, yes.
But the areas where NVIDIA struggle, that's exactly where I think Intel needs to be targeting. I think that's what they're trying to do. NVIDIA has been struggling with the lower end cards. GPUs are expensive, like I said. And obviously, as you're noting, like the VRAM thing is a serious issue. If they're still going to launch an 8 gigabyte card, that sucks, right? Like, so I think actually Intel is on the right track here. AMD they haven't been targeting the ultra high end, but they're still generally targeting high enough end that the prices are pretty high. And the low end parts from NVIDIA and AMD are less exciting. But I really think that Intel's striking, and they're really trying to come in to fill a spot in the market that I don't think has been well served. And so that is kind of what they need to do. But like, I would love to see a high end GPU from Intel eventually. It's just going to take time before that's a tough kind of product to make. I do think it's still interesting in that those Halo products do sort of set the tone for the brand, right?
Yeah.
Like, and I think it would eventually behoove them to maybe have something like that if they can keep keep the gas in the tank, keep this whole train rolling smoothly, from the gaming side at least. As far as everything else, the servers, that's a whole different market, as you guys touched on. But I don't know. Either way, I do want them to find success here, and I really hope they get there.
I would say, just as one final addendum here, because I forgot to mention it earlier when Rich asked me, but the machine learning performance of the ARC B580 is actually very impressive. When you look across benchmarks, for Stable Diffusion, for ML Perf, for all kinds of machine learning tests, it is just beating the crap out of comparable GPUs, like often really clowning on the older ARC cards, beating RTX 4060 by huge margins, like up to a 2 times margin some tests. So the fact is, like, it is a really good machine learning architecture, it seems like to me. So possibly that's the direction Intel is heading. I'm only speculating here, but get your foot in the door with the gaming cards, establish a good base of support there, and then possibly build out these really big server GPUs in the future. Maybe they're not the most efficient GPUs for gaming, but maybe they could be appropriate for the server at some point in the future, because they are seeming to really push machine learning performance in these GPUs.